Thanks, Deb. Let me begin with something a little light-hearted. Here are the top 5 things you will never hear a mother say. Top 5 things a mother will never say. Number 1, how on earth can you see the television from all that way back? Number 2, yeah, I used to skip school a lot too. The third thing you'll never hear a mother say, let me smell that shirt. Yeah, it's still good for another week. Number 4, well, if Johnny's mummy says it's okay, then that's good enough for me. And the 5th thing, you go ahead and keep that stray dog, honey. I'll be glad to feed and walk him every day. Now, you could probably do the same thing for ministers. What are the things you'll never hear a minister say? All right, things like, let's just go ahead and skip offertory this week. Never hear a minister say that. Or how about, look, I think we should put evangelism on hold for the rest of the year. There's another thing you'll never hear a minister say. But the one I want to look at today, the thing I hope you'll never hear a minister say is, I think we've finally made it as a church. We've reached perfection. Okay? There's nothing more we need to improve around this place. And it's for this reason that we kick off every year with what we call Vision Sunday. All right? It is the Sunday where we stop and think about how we as a church can grow and improve across the next year. And so in previous years, we've looked at things like delighting in God. That was Vision Sunday many years ago. We've looked at delighting in our Sunday worship. That was something we were looking at. We've talked about building a deep relationship with God. We've talked about evangelism and revival, and we've talked about discipleship. Now, one of the things we haven't looked at in the 11 years I've been at this church is what it means to be the body of Christ. All right, and so for Vision Sunday 2023, I'd like to look at how each of us individually and corporately can play our part to be the body of Christ here at Irwin Anglican. And I want to look at this topic for 2 reasons. So the first is that on the whole, Irwin Anglican is doing quite well at the moment. I don't know about you, but I thought our church really felt like the body of Christ across 2022. All right, our Sunday services ran smoothly. People are stepping up to help out, particularly when others are away on a particular week. There were plenty of visitors at our outreach services and events. Those of us going through tough times, and there's some of us going through things like cancer at the moment, they have told me they're feeling very loved and very well cared for by our church. And look, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like COVID has shown us the importance of community. All right, attendance from our regulars seems to be up a bit. So we are doing well. But there's always room for improvement, isn't there? And so the second reason I'd like to look at this topic is because when you are doing well as a church, that's probably the best time to stop and think about, well, what else could we be doing to be the body of Christ? That's what I want to look at today. So I've got 3 points. You can see that on your the inside of your news sheet. 3 points to help us be the body of Christ here at Irwin Anglican. So I want to begin by looking at what it means to be united, a united body of Christ. So I've titled that point, We Are One Body, and that's looking at verses 12 to 14. The rest of the passage then looks at how, alongside that unity, the body also needs diversity. And so I've titled that, We Are Many Parts. And we'll then conclude with our application, which is in which we'll see where God might be able to use each of us at Irwin Anglican. So I've titled that point, What Parts Our Body Needs Right Now. But friends, if you love this church as much as I do, and you want to see it grow and improve across 2023, then please stick with me as we look at We Are One Body, We Are Many Parts, and what parts our body needs right now. So you've hopefully got the passage open there, page 1784, 1 Corinthians 12, starting at verse 12. Our opening verses say this: Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we are all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free. And we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, the New Testament uses several metaphors to describe the church. It calls the church things like a flock, a gathering, a family. It's described as a vine in one passage, and a body. And by body, it means a human body with hands and feet, with eyes and ears, with a head and a torso, okay? Now, the head is always referring to Christ. He is our head, and the rest is us, all right? Now, our second point is going to focus on how every different person in the church has a different part to play in the body, but these opening 3 verses focus on how we are all part of the body. Right? It doesn't matter if you've been just coming for a few weeks or you've been here for 40 years. Right? We are all equal members of this thing called Earlwood Anglican. Please do not make the mistake of thinking that the church is the minister or the church is the parish council. Okay? Truth be told, if there were a hierarchy to church membership, I'd probably be at the bottom, all right? I'm the only one that gets paid to turn up every week, and chances are I may not be here in 5 or 10 years' time. I might move on. Right? The church is not the minister. The church is not the parish council. The church is the people. It's all of us. We are all members of the body of Christ. And this means 2 very important things. 2 things I want to say about us all being part of the body. So the first is, when people leave our church, particularly when they leave for sad reasons, I mean non-ministry focused reasons, it feels like having a body part amputated. So a few years back, several families left our church. It was a very sad time. Now, some of them told me to my face that they were leaving because of me. Now, I'm okay about that. I mean, it's sad when people say things like that, but I've learned that you cannot please all the people all the time, okay? But here's the thing. So, it hurts a bit when you hear that. But here's the thing. Well, I've had more than one conversation with current members of our church who have said to me that certain of those members left because of them. They think they left because of them, when I know those people left because of me. Now, what am I trying to say by this? My point is, the whole church hurts when people leave, don't they? Right? We hurt because our church is a body. The second important thing I want to say is that we are all owners of this church. And when you own something, you take care of it, don't you? Like, take your car, for example. Trivia question, do you know what car handles the best? Which car handles the best? It's a hire car. All right? Hire cars can take speed bumps at any speed. They go up and down gutters, no worries. All right? Touch parking, all good with a hire car, because you don't own it, do you? But a car you've bought with your own money, you have a vested interest in looking after it, right? And it's the same with Earlwood Anglican, all right? This is what verse 13 says, for we were all baptised by one Spirit so as to form one body. If you are a member of this church, then you have a vested interest in taking care of this church because you are an owner, not a hirer. Right? Now, the first thing that's going to mean is turning up each week. Right? Do you understand that when you don't come to church one week, the body of Christ, your body, suffers as a result of that? Right? It's like the right hand or the left nostril deciding not to show up. Now, look, a body can function if you've got a broken hand or a blocked nose, but you're not functioning at 100%, are you? So please know that when you don't turn up once or twice a month, your body is suffering. But second, when you do turn up, and I pray it's every week, if you see something that needs your attention, give it some attention. Right? So it's like when you're at home. If you're at home and you see something that's broken or fixed, what do? Well, if you're a teenager, you do nothing. If you're a tradie, you also do nothing. Why is it that tradies always have houses that are in the process of being renovated? for years and years. But the rest of us, we will fix it, won't we? We'll deal with it. And it's the same with your church. All right, this is your home away from home. So if you come to church on Sunday and you see someone sitting alone or you see someone that's upset, go and sit with them. If you see something that's broken or dirty and it's within your power, deal with it. Right? If it's not within your power, you think maybe it's a little above your pay grade, then come and see me or the wardens and discuss with us how we as a church will be able to deal with it. But what verses 12 to 14 are saying is we are one body. So please, take ownership of your body. However, some of you may be saying, well, look, Brendan, that's all good and well, but I'm not qualified to step in and deal with things. Like I don't have those gifts that the minister has or that the wardens have or that Bible study leaders have or our morning tea people have, all right? And you know, you might be saying to me, look, you don't know how it feels, Brendan, to feel very inadequate around these amazing people. Well, the Apostle Paul does. And he says something into that. So have a look at verse 15. Now, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? And if the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? So what we learn here is that there were people in Paul's day who felt very inadequate in their church. All right, they looked around and they saw the preachers and they saw the deacons and they saw the Bible study leaders and they said, look, because I don't have those flashy gifts and skills, I'm less a part of the body, if a part of the body at all. And Paul says here very forcefully, that is an invalid statement to make. And it's invalid on two levels. Right? So firstly, there are many different types of skills and gifts that God has given to the church. So Paul says this right down the bottom. Right? It's not an exhaustive list, but it gives us an indication that there are many gifts and skills. So have a look at verse 28. And God has placed in the church, first of all, apostles, second, prophets, third, teachers, then miracles, gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, and of different kinds of tongues. All right? Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? Now, we miss it in the English, but the way those questions are asked in the Greek expects the answer to be no. Right? The body is not all made up of feet. And it's not all made up of hands. It would be a very odd-looking body if it was, would it not? But also a poor functioning body. Okay, God has given a variety of skills and gifts, all for the building up of the church. So that's the first thing. The second reason that it's invalid to say I'm not a part of the body is given in verse 18. All right, where is it? Up the top. But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be. See, what verse 18 is saying is God has put you in this church because there are things you offer this church that no one else can offer. Right? There are people in this church that only you can help. There are things in this church that only you can do. Right? The simple fact that you are part of this church shows God has placed you here for a reason. And so when we say things like, oh, look, I don't have much to offer here, there's not much I can do to serve here, we're not just making an invalid statement, we're actually making a dangerous one. And what do I mean? I mean by comparing yourselves to others, what we're doing is we're resisting the very diversity God has put in our church to help it grow. Friends, you do not want a church full of leaders or preachers or singers. All right? A healthy body of Christ has a diversity of gifts and skills. So please don't say, I'm not happy being a foot or an ear. All right, verse 18, but in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. All right, we are one body, but we are many parts. So the final question we need to ask is, how can I serve the body of Christ here at Elwood Anglican? What can we do? How do I figure out what parts of the body I might be so that I can actually start being those parts? Well, there are 3 steps we can take to determine how we can serve our church. So three points by way of application, okay? How can we figure out what parts of the body we might be? Step 1 is to look in. All right, what do I mean by that? We ask ourselves what gifts and abilities I might have. But here's the thing. If Australian Idol has taught us anything, it's that sometimes we're not the best judges of our own gifts and abilities. All right? Like some of those contestants really needed a friend to say, hey, maybe singing is not for you. So don't just ask yourself, right? Ask a trusted friend or colleague what they think you might be good at, all right? But step 1 is to look in and see where your gifts might lie. Step 2 is to look out. And we look out to see what kind of needs our church may have, all right? But even better than seeing needs is seeing burdens. What burdens you at this church? What do you look out and say, man, our church really would benefit from this? Right? What you're asking is, what are you passionate about? What resonates with you? Because a lot of times people, when they look in, they actually miss certain gifts and skills they actually have simply by the fact that they're passionate about something. Right? It is way better to find someone who is passionate about a ministry than someone who's just stepping in to fill a role. People have often found out that they were gifted simply because they were passionate about something. All right, so look in, then look out, and then thirdly, look up. What I mean is this. Knowing you're gifted and knowing you're passionate may get you off the line in terms of ministry, but it won't fuel you for the marathon that is ministry. Right, the thing that will keep us going for the long haul is to look up. And when we look up, what we see is a God who cannot help but serve me. I want to read to you from a parable. This is from Luke chapter 12. It's just 3 verses. This is a parable, Luke chapter 12, verse 25. Jesus says, be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Why? Truly I tell you, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. Do you understand, brothers and sisters, that in heaven, Jesus will be serving us? That's just who he is. He cannot help but serve. Yet as amazing as it is that God is serving us right now, day in, day out, what it also means is that if Jesus had to serve us over again on the cross, that was his main act of service, if he had to serve us again on the cross, he would. That's just who he is. And so, friends, keeping our eyes focused on that will fuel us for service each and every day, right? If we take our eyes off Jesus, our tank runs empty. Right? So look in, look out, and then look up. As we close, I want to get even more specific in our application. I want to give us the top 5 parts of our body that are needed right now at Elwood Anglican. This is my perception of what is going on at our church, all right? And I would love it, as I go through these very quickly, I would love it if we could be reflecting prayerfully, not just now, but over the coming week or two, about how we may actually be able to serve our body in one of these ways. All right, so the top 5 parts that our church needs right now. And I want to start with the most important one, in my opinion. The most important one is our evening service. Right? Feels awesome this morning. We are packed. There's only a couple of rows empty. But in our evening service, we've lost quite a few people in recent years, mostly for good reasons, for ministry-focused reasons. Right? People have left to go to different churches and be involved in different ministries, I'm happy to say. But what it means is our evening service is feeling a little flat at the moment. And we want to keep it going because we've got a good number of youth in our youth group and they're starting to sort of funnel into our evening service. And so the number one thing our church needs right now is for some of our 10 a.m. parishioners to step up and commit to coming to the 6 p.m. service as well. I'm not saying swap services. What I'm saying is come in the morning. Please continue to come in the morning and then come back at night and encourage our evening service. Right? So my prayer is that some of our 10 a.m. congregation will be able to come back in the evenings. Now, our church is too small to give you a separate sermon in the evening. You'll get the same sermon again, all right? But I'm praying that some of our 10 a.m. service will be able to come along and really benefit our youth and young adults with some intergenerational ministry, intergenerational encouragement, all right? It's mutual encouragement. It goes both ways. But the most important thing our body needs right now is encouragement for our 6 p.m. service. Could you commit to that? Doesn't have to be every week. It might be once or twice a month. Number two, most important thing in our church right now, I believe, is offertory. Now, I haven't preached on money for quite a while. It's a bit of an oversight. You need to continually be encouraged in terms of your generosity. But for a church our size, we should be able to afford more than one minister plus a student. We should be able to afford a part-time children's or youth worker or a part-time women's worker. All right? So the second way we can we can be a part of this body is to prayerfully reassess our generosity towards God. Third most important need for our church is we need a church warden. Brad and Dean have been doing the job of 3 people for the past 3 years. Now, they'll never say this, but my guess is it's taken a toll on them. It is a big job. Now, this is a specialised ministry. It's not just for anyone, all right? It requires a mature, long-term Christian. The wardens are the deacons of the Anglican Church, all right? Our parish councillors also do an enormous amount of work, but they assist our deacons, right? It's the wardens who are responsible for the money and the property at this church. And sadly, everyone I've asked in recent years to step up into this role has said no. So if you are a long-term Christian, a mature Christian, with the capacity to spend a few more hours each week serving our body, then please can I ask you to prayerfully reflect on whether God is calling you to this ministry. It is a much-needed ministry at our church. Fourth is our music ministry. Now, before you write this off and say, but I don't play an instrument, Brendan, please know that 2 years ago, I didn't play the guitar or sing. Now, that doesn't mean I'm rushing off to audition for Australia's Got Talent. I know I'm not that talented, right? But if a 48-year-old can take up an instrument to serve his church, then anyone can. And in particular, if there was an instrument you used to play when you wore a younger man's or woman's clothes, maybe it's time to get back into it. And finally, our lawn mowing roster and our cleaning roster is in desperate need of help. Right? We want this place to look nice so that when visitors come, they go, these people take pride in their facilities. Now, the facilities are not the church. Remember, the people are the church, but it shows that we actually love this church. So if there is something that, if you have some spare time during the week, you would like to come and help with those, please come and see me or see Carol for the cleaning roster or Peter for the lawn mowing roster. Now you may think, look, they're not very glamorous roles, Brendan, but remember what Paul said. I want to close with verse 23. Where is it? The parts that we think are less honourable, we treat with special honour. And the parts that are unrepresentable, we treat with special, special modesty. So if you'd like special honour before Lord, please come and talk to me about that. But friends, that is how we can be the body of Christ and hopefully see our church grow in 2023. My prayer is that this week we will all reflect prayerfully on the ongoing service Jesus gives us each and every day, all right? Keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. And also, in what ways can we pass that received service from Jesus onto our fellow members of our body here at Earlwood Anglican? For we are all baptised by one Spirit so as to form one body.